I got your email, no, or text it was, about the primula. I would love to have primula, but it's way too dry and sandy here. I admire them in my clients' gardens who have an irrigation system that they use, or one of them has an irrigation system, and she lives on the lake, and she's pretty much at lake level. I mean, they are just spectacular there, but here they're sad. They're very sad. So I'm going to pass on primula. There's, there we go. Ahead of the game there. Got your boxwood, your sad boxwood pictures, Tanya. Those look like they've had more than just shearing dieback. It looks like they've had boxwood moth out there. And I did put it into the presentation. It'll come up later. But about the only one for one replacement plant that I can think of for boxwood is inkberry, Ilex glabra. I'm often, I've been fooled many times where I walk past something and your boxwood's over there and they turn out to be Ilex glabra. They have other problems. Deer will eat them, or deer don't eat boxwood. They're only hardy to zone 5, so they're okay here, but not further north of here. They're not quite as good in the shade. I've got some in the shade and they seem to be doing pretty well, but they're not as good in the shade as boxwood. But I'll cover that later just in case you have to leave. Well, you'll have something because I didn't answer your email yet. Looked at pictures. Hello, everybody. Anybody who's here early knows the routine about keeping yourself muted except when you raise your hand. Oh, yeah. And aren't they pretty? This is the possibly isopyrum that an ephemeral that is in our garden. It was here when we got here. It has expanded somewhat, but it's an ephemeral. It's going to be gone. And by the time it's gone, the wood poppy behind it, by the time it's gone, the squirrel corn back here at Dicentric cucularia, one of our native wildflowers, that'll be gone too. And by then there will be American Canadian wild ginger growing in there, and this bottle brush buckeye covers over it, so we don't mind giving it the space. And we've got some Bergenia to start filling in and move over. There's the ginger coming up. So does anybody have any questions to start with? We had a couple this week that were fun. One that I got to reach back 24 years. This is a night blooming cereus. It's a cactus relative, kind of like Christmas cactus. It is related to the cactus and it's in the genus Cereus, but it's not one of those prickly things. And it blooms only at night. And my friend Martha Ferguson, who was our master gardener coordinator at the time, had one and had it blooming well enough over the years that she could tell when the buds were getting ready to open. And so she could call her friends and say, tonight, sometime between midnight and 2 o'clock, these big flowers are going to open. And they would come over. Got a question this week about someone who has a night blooming cereus, has had it for 4 years. It seems to be growing well, but doesn't bloom. And cereus, most of the night blooming cacti are pretty much dependent on the day length changing. And this one at Martha's house was in a place where, to the left of the picture here, facing straight onto the plant, was a great big 2-story high glass wall of the entranceway. So it got great light all day long. And then because this area isn't the space where the family spent any time at night, that was over in the other part of the house, rarely were the lights on. So the night didn't get disrupted. So right on cue at the equinox in the spring and sometimes in the fall too, it would bloom. So we advised Cheryl about the night blooming cereus that she's got to check and see whether maybe it's in a place where people are turning on the lights at night. Because all you have to do on something like a poinsettia that sets its buds based on having a long night, if you interrupt that night, even for a few minutes when you turn the light on, it clicks the plant over and it doesn't feel like it's got a long night anymore, and then they won't bloom. Look at that tartar tulip. My neighbor used to come by all the time, look at our tartar tulips blooming, and he'd say, "What is that?" I'd say, "What's a tulip?" He said, "That's not a tulip, that's a crocus." Year after year, "That's a crocus." Well, it's not. It's a, Tulipa desistemon, um, which might be desistemon. I've never ever heard anybody pronounce it, but it's called the tartar tulip, and it's only as big as a crocus, and it's quite early to bloom. And like a lot of the species tulips, it's a tulip that the deer don't like to eat. So if you don't mind having early small tulips, you can still have tulips even if you have deer. Other questions that came in, I think this was Tanya too. She said the trees are all volcano mulch, and is it too late? Can you pull back the mulch? You can pull back the mulch anytime. You may find that there are roots growing into it, and those adventitious roots are not worthwhile to the plant. They're not going to hold it, support it, not going to support it nutritionally, not going to support it physically, mechanically. But you may find that you have to pull away, and it'll rip away roots as it comes away. You might find that the bark is rotted, in which case the tree is not going to make it in the long run. Depends on how long it was covered up, how long the moisture was stacked against the trunk. But no, if you can uncover them at some point later in their life, uncover them. Get those flares to show. What you do with all the mulch, I don't know. But definitely that's a stovepipe going into the ground. Looks like it's already had some problems of its own. It is a spruce. What kind of spruce are you? Looks like a young Norway spruce, but the branchlets aren't hanging yet. Could be a white spruce, but it's got some kind of a fungus problem or branch breakage problem, maybe even borers further up, and there's drips coming down the trunk. And Judith sent pictures of her peony. She said it looked fine, and now it doesn't look fine. It's been nice days, and what's going on with the peony? This looks like frost damage. It doesn't have to be a lot of frost when the foliage is just coming up, and it can happen before you see it. It's only when the leaf starts to unfurl that you see the kind of the burned edge on it. But it's pretty common to have frost damage on this in the spring if the weather changes, especially if it's in a windy place where the air, what's that called? I think it's called a convection frost. Might be an invection frost, but where the wind is blowing in a change of air very quickly. But there is a loss of flower many times from frost damage, and people don't, they say, my peony doesn't bloom. Well, it could be that it tried to bloom, but when it's buds at the tip, very tiny, 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 before they even swell up, flower buds got killed by frost. It does happen. And those places that got hit by frost end up in trouble later on, quite often because the cell structure is damaged. And so peony botrytis can infect it more readily. And so you get more botrytis later in the year. If you take a look at a place like the American Peony Society, they're going to recommend that if a peony is frost damaged, that you cut it back. It'll grow back, just like the peonies that I cut back right after they bloom. I cut whole stems all the way down to the ground, and dormant buds come up. Sometimes they don't come back when you cut them all the way back, not that year, but don't dig them up because they're going to come back the next year. So if it's badly frost damaged and you think that's what it is, you can always cut off the frosted parts and think about either putting it in a place that's not in a frost pocket or giving it some protection in the spring, a little hat over the top, pavilion over the top like a tent would work. I forgot to check on time here. Stephen will not be with us tonight because he is with 4 grandkids and two of their friends watching them. I should be watching them with him, and I will be after we get done here. I really appreciate Martha Ferguson. I really appreciated the pictures of your night blooming cereus, and I shipped them over to Cheryl Benrup for her friend. I hope they don't make her too jealous. And the picture of John was a bonus in there, like icing on the cake. Thank you. Okay. Huh. I see a hand up, nothing going on. Oh, there we go. I want to divide peonies within the next few months. Would it be okay to do so now when they're small? Sure. It's often a lot easier to divide the peonies and move them around when they're not 2 feet tall and flopping all over the place when you divide them. But you can divide them anytime. We've stolen pieces from peonies when they're in bloom sometimes, because that's the only time we could be sure which peony we were getting a hold of. And let's see, when did we last move ones that were just barely coming up? Oh, when Patton and Marcia's well suddenly had to be redug. We had to move the whole garden out of the way, and the peonies were up, about 8 inches. And we just picked them all up in a clump and moved them. They're fine. They're not, you're not going to get probably all of the root. Uh, a good sized peony's got a great big root ball, goes as wide as the peony goes. So you're going to cut some root, and they might be smaller that year than they would have been otherwise, but they move just fine. Oh, I see, Carol. Thank you, Therese. Yeah, just let me know when there's a question there, because otherwise I'll just run right over the top of it. That's my usual way of doing things. Just keep on going, bull in a china shop. Been talking to people as we were working on our webinar for next a week from tomorrow, Steve and I, and decided that we're going to open it up to the world, because there's too many people that were asking for input, and we would like to spread their words further and further around. We'll keep it a secret other than that, but we'll be able to invite anybody who wants to come. I'm going to open my chat a little bit larger. We got about a minute left here, so let's see if there's another question we can do. Come on, chat, get bigger. That's yes, it is true. Margie can't unmute either. I wonder whether I did. I might have hit a setting or something. If you cut a butterfly bush all the way back down, you get nice straight stems that come up, provided it's a healthy butterfly bush and it's growing in sun. You might get 4 feet out of one of the smaller ones. You might get 5 or 6 feet out of one of the standard ones. But I cut them all the way to the ground. And this year, I doubt very much that what happens sometimes is that they come from, like roses, there'll be buds further up on the stem, and people will cut back just to a bud. They get real bushy and twiggy that way. I don't think they bear their flowers as prettily that way. But this year, they seem to have all been pretty much, the tops have been killed back. So your live wood is way down at the bottom anyway. Michelle, I'm speaking sometime soon at a garden center tomorrow. Stephen and I are at Ray Wiegand's nursery at 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock. We're talking about pruning first. Got a whole stack of branches I've been stealing from neighbors. Can I have a piece of your white, Julia? Can I have a piece? We're going to talk about pruning first at 10 o'clock, and then at 1 o'clock, we're talking about simplifying the garden. Those of you who've been on our webinars, you won't be hearing anything new, but I hear from people all the time that they can rehear pruning stuff all the time. So you're welcome to come. It's a big open house. It's a lot of fun, where Wiegand's always has, well, the homemade donuts are delightful, but there's donuts and hot dogs and special things on sale, and they bring in lots of beautiful plants. They make the place look gorgeous.
Hey, Janet, it's Therese. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Great. I wasn't sure if you had answered Barbara's question about the best insecticide to kill the boxwood moth caterpillar.
No, oh, I didn't see that one roll by. Thank you. There isn't a best one. There are a number recommended. Barbara, if you go onto the internet, I think we might have sent something out too, and do boxwood tree moth Penn State. I think they have the best bulletin, and then they list a number of things that you can use, a number of insecticides that work, including malathion and pyrethrum, which are pretty common. But they also say that there isn't any one strategy that works best, that you better try cultural, biological, and chemical control if you're going to try to control them, because we don't know their life cycle really well. We don't know we're going to have 2 generations a year or 3 generations a year, so you have to keep watching. There are biological controls like BT that you can put on. That's a bacteria that infects caterpillars, moth and butterfly larvae. You can put BT on it. You can use systemic insecticides. You can encourage the birds to get in there. You can prune to keep it thinner so that you can see what's going on. But there's no one best one. They haven't gotten any real more vigorous response from one chemical than another.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Did you happen to catch Carol's question about the King Alfred daffodils?
No, no.
Okay, so what she's asking is she needs to edit King Alfred daffodils. They're taking over her bed. Right now, other perennials, shrubs, etc., are coming up, so she can't dig them. Wondering how she can get them thinned.
Well, mark the place and dig them later. But it's very difficult to kill a bulb by just cutting back the foliage. They're used to being dormant for 6 months a year, and when they're a big clump, they're already got a lot of energy built up. Um, but I just dig them, and you dig the other plants out of the way while you're digging them out. But I can't tell you anything more than that. We've smothered beds for 2 years and still had bulbs make it up through. We've seen beds dug up by a backhoe and everything tumbled and put back in at various depths from 1 to 6 feet and still seen bulbs come back up. So I can't tell you any other way than to dig them out. And yeah, they do. King Alfred, many of the other daffodils are very vigorous growers when they're in the full sun. It's one of those things that you have to just take along with the beauty of the daffodils is that they're going to need to be thinned out. One thing you can do early on, maybe it won't work now, but if you've got daffodils that are at the right density for you now, then start cutting them off earlier. Don't let all of the foliage stay there. What you need is for the bulbs to replenish themselves, but not get enough energy to make more bulbs. So yeah, if your clumps are about the size they are now, then just cut them back after they finish blooming. And that's they've been up. How long have the daffodil foliage been up? It's been up almost a month. They're going to be blooming for, depending on which daffodils you've got, another week or two, and then you can cut them.
And Janet, I just wanted to mention that it is 7 o'clock if you wanted to start.
No, I think it's actually after 7 o'clock.
I know.
And that's okay. We're all an informal bunch here. Remember, you can raise your hand. A couple people have had trouble turning their microphones on tonight. I don't know why. It isn't on this end. I don't think I've done anything, but if you'd like to talk when you come up with a question, look for that raise your hand control in the look for the raise your hand control in reactions or in the participants menu. And then you can flip to the top of the list. Teresa's helping me watch chat while Steve is babysitting tonight.
And would you like to continue with questions or?
Sure. As soon as I just officially record the opening here. Welcome to Free4All Friday, where we're welcoming everybody to celebrate growing and cultivate problem solving. This is our 39th Friday. It's April 25th. This is gardenataz.org. I'm Janet McConovich. Stephen Nicola is not with us tonight because he's with 4 grandkids and 2 friends, feeding them dinner while our son and his wife and friends are out at a party. So I'm holding down the fort, and Teresa's helping me with chat. And I'm going to look right now just quickly to see if Margaret is here because Margaret had offered to help with chat. There she is. Margaret, we're going to make you a co-host. That way she can turn things off and on too. And Therese, because I know that you are always here and always listening, I'm going to make you a co-host also so that you guys both have the ability to turn things on and off when you want to. There we go. So just Janet, you'll see on your screen tonight. And we hope that you're telling people that gardenataz.org is there with lots and lots of articles that they can look up that we've posted over the years because people ask questions like we're doing now. We're going to tell you the things that we had questions about this week or things that we were doing and take your questions about what you're doing because that's the best way to get the whole universe of the unending universe of ideas and situations with plants out for people to talk about with each other. We've been writing a long time and we continue to write now. So We just keep putting stuff onto the website, including these Free4All Fridays, which everybody's invited to. We always have the link posted on our Fridays page. Just go to gardenatoz.org and click on Fridays, and then you can click the link and join us on Fridays from 7 to 8, except for the very first Saturday of each month, because that's when we have a webinar and we don't do a Friday night the night before. So what questions are there, Therese and Margaret? I'll let Margaret chime in so I make sure she's still here. I see something.
I'm here.
There she is. Have you got any questions that you want to?
There's a question about the gold leaf Caryopteris. Someone had said, I think it was Carol, had said she had given up growing it. She says, is there any way to combat the mites?
I have not found a way. The Caryopteris that are in the garden centers, all the ones that I have found, tend to have mite problems. I think some propagation might being done from plants that are susceptible to or are carrying mites to start with. But the gold leaf ones, which are so beautiful, gold leaf on the Caryopteris with the blue flowers in August, it's just gorgeous. But they tend to become weaker and weaker very quickly. Over a year or two, you lose the plants. But there really isn't any good way to deal with mites. You can cut the plant all the way down and get rid of all of the debris. Don't keep it nearby. And you might be able to limit the numbers of them, but you have to have a real vigorously growing plant to keep coming back all new each year. I cut them down each year, and as long as they're a gray leafed one, right now we're growing beyond midnight with real dark blue flowers and gray foliage. And we just cut it all the way down every year and it comes back up. It's 2.5, 3 feet tall. But it doesn't seem to have a mite problem like the gold leaf one does.
Best time to prune my boxwood shrubs. Can I prune them now?
You sure can prune them now. They're in active growth right now, which means that you're going to get more branching than you would have if you pruned them a little while ago, or if you waited a little while to prune them, like after they finish the first flush of growth. But you can certainly prune them now. I just pruned 2 chunks out of mine to take with me to the Ray Wiggins open house tomorrow. I don't know if they call it open house or spring celebration, but if it's a healthy boxwood, you can cut it now. Do watch out. Everybody watch your boxwood though. Sometime very soon, the boxwood caterpillars will start working on it. And when they're little and they first hatch out, you might not notice the damage. Look inside and see if you've got leaves being eaten, because that boxwood tree moth has wiped out Europe's boxwoods, and it's working on doing the same to ours here. Monica, I see something here. Monica has a hydrangea that was her mom's. Totally wrong conditions, but I keep it for her. We have plants. We kept one hydrangea for 30 years because Aini Cinco, no, Aini Koski gave it to us. She said, it never bloomed for me. Maybe it'll bloom for you. And so it just grows foliage, doesn't bloom. Not like most of the blues and the pinks. The buds on the tip of the branch that are so important to bloom are not hardy in Michigan's winter. Okay, well.
And Janet, if I may, Monica's response was to David Tercell's comment about losing a couple of good friends over the winter time. And one was known for snapdragons and the other for her dahlias. But he's told their families that they'll devote more space to a public garden. And he's asking if anyone else has grown flowers in honor or memory of others. And Nancy answered that, excuse me, a flower bed at their church was just full of church members that had passed away, and that Arcade, Michigan has a memorial garden where she plants varieties for loved ones, via their names. So that's also what Monica was referring to.
It's a great thing to have in a garden, is to have plants that are for particular people. If they're connected to, is a client with a rose that came from her great aunt. We have Uncle Axel, great Uncle Axel's lupins. We used to have Kurt's great aunt's bread poppies. We don't have those anymore. And it just, even if it's only you that recognizes them, it's a chance to remember, think and remember them. We just had lost a cousin of Steve's this week, and just hearing people talk about him, just a reason to talk about somebody that's gone is great. Okay. I am being told that Michelle says that we missed Carol Herman's question. And I have a terrible time with this great big pointer scrolling my chat up. So if you repeat that question.
I can read that one to you if you want,
Sure.
Janet. It's so she's saying, I have some wild sprawling roses at the edge of her property that she'd like to get rid of. What is the easiest, least painful way to do so?
Easy and least painful don't even compute with roses. I just got a couple pieces of roses from a neighbor last night, and they tried to kill me just taking them to the car to take with me. I don't know that there is a least painful way, except to make sure that you cover up with non with tighter clothing and maybe gauntlet gloves, and then cut back until you find the rooted places. It's good to take them out because if they're sprawling, they may very well be the multiflora roses that are the carriers, the most susceptible, and end up being carriers for the rosette virus that is bothering all of our other roses and causing us to not be able to grow them. But I don't think I can tell you any least painful way. Hire somebody else. There is a thing called it's not a brush hog. There's a piece of equipment that mounts on a good sized tractor that chews up the top of the plants and also rips the bottom out, and it's a clearance, a wood clearance. I can get a name for you for another time, and maybe you can but you have to hire somebody to do that because this thing is carried around on a trailer. It's not something that your normal everyday transportation is going to pull behind you. Diane, I see, wants to know what we do if we see boxwood caterpillars at work on our boxwoods now. Kill all the caterpillars that you can, however it is that you want to do it. But you need to know that if you see them, that everyone that you see that gets past you and matures and lays eggs as an adult moth, and they're very inconspicuous moths and night flying. You're not going to notice them flying around. But everyone that lays eggs is just going to be another generation of more caterpillars eating your shrubs. And how you kill them is up to you. You can knock them down with water and do that repeatedly and hope that your biome contains enough predators on the soil level to eat those caterpillars that get knocked down. You can use an insecticide, and any number of insecticides work, from the pyrethrums and soap to the systemic insecticides. And then we know that they have in Michigan and Ohio 2 and might be 3 generations a year. So take your growing season up until September and kind of divide it into 3 pieces and say, well, they're going to be back in 5 weeks, 6 weeks. We're still guessing, and make sure that you keep looking for them then. Terrible pest, terrible, terrible pest. Let me tell you some things that are going on here. I do cut down right by the house, the perennial garden, and this is a shrub and tree, shrub and ground cover area, but temporarily until the ground covers fill in, I am weeding it, and so I did cut back while I weeded, and that was less than a week ago. And now the difference is quite outstanding. That's what happens in spring, and it happens so fast. So many things that we wish we could do, and we can't do them because there it was a minute ago, I could walk through the bed, and now I can't walk through the bed, not without tiptoeing around everything that I don't want to squash. And the vernal sweet pea, which is such a sweet plant, it had no color on it a week ago. It was just a green little shrubby creature, as they are. And now it's just busting with flowers all over the place. The bumblebees have been on it. The plants are kind of like kids, suddenly they're taller than you remember them being, and they do this thing. This is Geranium roseanne, and it looks so cute and little right now, and it's going to be laying out almost 3 feet out onto the patio. It's going to climb up into the peony and poke out the top. They fool you this time of year into thinking that you've got room to say put another plant in. I've lost many plants to vicious things like geranium roseanne that fill in. And we were showing you our hedge recently and the problem with the pine. But look at the area in front of the hedge. This was not even 2 weeks ago. And what you see there in the brown, kind of everything laid in one direction, is all the foliage from last year's anemone windflower, Pulsatilla vulgaris. And now it's all color. There's a white one in there somewhere, it hasn't shown up yet, but they're coming up gangbusters now. And I have to look and turn the other way. The ground cover, these ground cover and shrub areas, including out here in this toward the street where it's taller, these are not areas that I'm going to cut down until later. And then I'm going to cut down very lightly and bundle it and keep it because we're trying to encourage wildlife. While I was cutting in the perennial garden, as I was cutting down a Joe Pye, which has hollow stems, while I was cutting, hand on the stems, clippers clipping below the stem, a green sweat bee landed on the top of one of the stalks and climbed into the hollow tube. I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. This one's you have to go out and do the Joe Pye out there." It's hard to do. And it happens. I can say that I'm glad that I'm not down in South Carolina as a gardener because this is a bed that was planted in the fall with winter blooming things that would carry on through the winter and into the early spring. But look at what all their flowering kale, their ornamental kale did. Is it all bolted and went to seed, which makes it look like the whole bed is weedy, doesn't it? And I just thought I'd throw this one in here because thinking about overgrowing in wild areas, don't put things into your garden that you think you can keep under control that are bigger than you want them to be. This is wisteria, which my friend from Georgia always called hysteria. And this is about a 70-foot tree. This time of year when it's blooming, it's easy to see what a wild and strangling thing this is. It laps over the tops of things and kills them by shading them out, and becomes almost impossible to take out. I mean, that's a big plant, wisteria. I see people put it on 6-foot arbors all the time and think it's going to be a real chore to keep that cut. This is our magnolia. It took 3 years of no bloom at all for this magnolia to finally say, okay, now I like it here. Magnolias are good understory trees if you've got a high canopy, and we've decided we'll throw in a magnolia because my mom loved magnolia trees. And this year it's really putting on a show. That's what it's doing right now. Okay, so what questions are there? Margaret, you see anything going on? Or trees? I'll keep moving.
Carol Herman has another question about hyacinths. They look great the first year or so. Now fewer florets and not so impressive. What actions can I do to improve them in the future?
I don't know what you can do to make it better. If they're not in the full sun, they do dwindle. And they do like a richer soil than some of the other bulbs do. So you might be able to dig them up and put them in a different place if they're not in the full sun, or if they're being too quickly covered over by something else. But I can't tell you anything else. I can ask around, and we're now asking around by putting this out. Anybody got any good tips on hyacinth? And those would be the Dutch hyacinthus hybrids that have a big club of very fragrant flowers. Very fragrant when they're outside. If you bring them inside, a lot of people cut them and bring them in and put them in a vase. You may find that the fragrance becomes cloying inside. As the flower ages, the fragrance changes from sweet to a decaying smell. It's just, I think it's a flag for the pollinators to know which flowers to go into and which not, but it can get headache type level for me. Sure, Jocelyn, we can grow magnolias in Michigan. They're the star magnolia is hardy down to zone 4, so you grow it even up toward Grayling and the north part of the mitten. The saucer magnolia, this one is a hybrid saucer magnolia. they're good all throughout zone 5. They have a tendency to open up their flowers when it gets warm in the spring and then get frosted, and so they bloom for a day and the flowers fall off. This year is going to be one of the better years because the spring waited and came in without those warm days that were followed by a lot of frost. So it's a pretty thing. And it's why they're a little bit better in the understory than out in the open. They're less likely to get frosted when they got a little bit of protection above them. This one has black cherries above it.
And Janet, I just wanted to mention Tanya had left and came back, and now she can see pictures. So if anybody is having that problem, get out and get back in, and it should clean up for you.
Thank you, Tanya, for knowing to do that, and thank you for letting us know. Okay, it's little tree time, I'm noticing. Little trees that I missed in weeding in fall. So this one is one that was there in the fall. It was probably just a two-leaf seedling, and now they're up and they stick up very, very rigidly above the things that are coming up. So this is the time of year to be able to see them and get them. And what you want to do is reach down as low as you can to get last year's wood at the base to get a good hold of it, because they very quickly become more than you want to pull out. Sometimes I have to take a fork and loosen underneath in order to get something like this out. And it is interesting though, when you get off these little trees, see how this one, we're looking at the roots of this box elder. And even at 3 years old, which is how long I missed it, it has two colors of bark and then the green part on it. Even at this age, you can see how it's developing its flare roots. I probably broke this one when I was yanking it out. But 1, 2, 3, 4 roots that are thicker than any of the other roots and are thickening quickly. And here's some that I just pulled out today. This one is in its second year. See, there's last year's wood. And now, this year coming out. So 3 years it's been there. But they don't have as much root as that one, not as developed. But if you look, you can already see the thicker roots. This one is thickening. This one back here is thickening. And that will stay that way. They are spread out along the root vertically now, but the distance between this root that's thicker at the back and this root that's thicker on the side, it's hard to see in 3 dimensions on these pictures here. These two roots, even though they're ½ inch apart now vertically, they're going to be literally at the same level as they thicken up and become flare roots that we can see at the ground level. Oh, Carol Herman has a yellow magnolia. I love yellow magnolias. I thought most of them bloomed later than the saucer magnolias, but I love the yellow magnolias. There's one called Butterfly that was developed by, I think it's called Butterfly. It was developed by a man who lived here in Bloomfield Hills and was doing a lot of magnolia crosses. And I loved it. I just loved it. This is our mysterious plant that is definitely a pulmonaria, but it's a pulmonaria with absolutely enormous leaves with not a single bit of variegation on them, and we're going to have to figure out which species it is. A lot more leaves on the leafy stem. See, there's one of our variegated pulmonarias behind it, and the stem has very few leaves on it. This is leafy all the way up, and then the leaves that follow after the bloom period are enormous. They're comfrey-sized leaves, but this is definitely not a comfrey. We don't know where it came from. Might even be a cross between 2 of ours that we've got. Thinking about last year, we've told you have to try to remember what happened last year, because it's going to happen again this year. And if it was something bad, nip it in the bud if you can. What we remembered is that when the lilac buds started showing color, flower buds started showing color, that's when we first saw the lily leaf beetles show up. Lily leaf beetles are a beetle that is another one of those exotics, invasives, that's shown up and has been working its way across the continent. It got recently, 4 or 5 years ago, became a problem in Michigan and Ohio. It affects the true lilies, so the liliums, those that bloom in the summer, and also the fritillarias. This is Crown Imperial, Fritillarius imperialis, and this is, what's its common name? Can't think what its common name. This is Fritillaria, oh, shoot. Okay, this is a fritillaria too, but these are the ones that they're going to attack along with the little bitty fritillarias. And you're looking right now for evidence of chewing on the leaves. You see chewing on the leaves, keep looking further. This is on a Crown Imperial. Keep looking further because you want to nip the first bunch in the bud, just like with those box tree moths that I was talking about. You need to get the first beetles that come out before they mate and lay eggs and get you a second generation of chompers. And they're very easy to see because they're very bright red. There it is right there. It was actually chewing when I found it. And they've already been mating on this plant, and those are the eggs that are laid and getting ready to hatch out. So you want to look for the chewing. You see chewing, you want to look for the beetles. You see the beetles, make sure you look for the eggs. They'll be on the leaves, sometimes on the top, but mostly on the underside of the leaf. But it's looking for this. So the lilacs are just showing color. It's called plant phenology when you time things by what the plants are doing in your locality. That'll tell you what the insects are doing because they're both responding to the same thing, to accumulated heat. Lilacs bloom, usually lilacs are in full bloom on Mother's Day. But some years it's a little cooler and they bloom later. And some years it's a little warmer earlier on and they bloom because they're developing based on accumulated heat. So you can watch for that. And last year we found that it was before they came into bloom, but when we could see flower buds, that we saw lily leaf beetle, and we decided we're going to try to battle this because we don't have true lilies in our garden, but we do have Fritillaria meleagris, the checker lily, and we like them. They spread around and we like to keep them. So last year we studiously came out every single day and killed everyone we could find. And then after they'd finished blooming, these Fritillarias, we cut them right down to the ground. We said, go away. Don't provide any food for the rest of the lily leaf beetles that might be here, and we'll see what we can do. So they went from in a week, they went from just being little mops to being today, this is today's picture, in full bloom. And we really love seeing them. The checker lily, you can see the checkers on the purple ones, not so clear on the white ones. And what you want to do is look close at the plants. Let me see it. And unfortunately, we have a big area of them. They came in as volunteers. And we said, oh, look, some Fritillaria followed us from a client's garden. And they've seated themselves around, and we like them. They're joyous this time of year, and then they're gone by the middle of summer. But to stand there and look at all of that foliage and look for damage can be a little wearing. I get down on my knees and I look, and I won't make you labor on this, but there's one visible in this picture. And what you look for is a bright red spot, motion and a bright red spot. So I'll sit down and kind of meditate on the Fritillarias, staring at them, looking across the tops, watching for motion on the leaves until I see, look right here. Do you see a bright red spot? Depends on how much resolution you've got on your screen probably, but right there, there's one crawling on the top. And what we found this year is that we seem to have made a dent. Last year at this time, when they were blooming, they were all chewed up. The flowers were chewed up. We were catching dozens of beetles. This year we've caught 18 or 20 total over a week's time of watching for them and killing them as we see them. Steve was proud of himself. He got the two that were mating first, and then came back and the other one was still there. They dropped to the ground and disappeared real quickly under the mulch. Whoops. You do have to squish them, and they do have a hard shell. It generally takes a fingernail to do that. Otherwise, they'll get away. But you need to kill them. And yes, you can use an insecticide, but picking them off works very well. We were walking through a garden with our friend Dave Mitchner, walking through his garden, which has just a ton of absolutely special lilium of all kinds. He's been on a number of plant expeditions all over the world, so he's brought back things that are quite unusual. And he's not going to give up his lilies. We were walking along, and I saw him step off the path a little ways, reach into a plant, come back with his hand crunched, and he said 102, because he just keeps killing them as he sees them. Okay, are there other questions before I forge ahead with things that Steve and I have seen? This is the double bloodroot, by the way, that blooms for longer because the pollinators can't figure out how to find anything in it, which is a little mean, but is the way of it. No questions?
Actually, Carol does have a question. She was planning on planting a small tree tomorrow, but because of all the rain that we've gotten today, she's worried about, compacting the soil. So as she says, I am now afraid to walk on the bed to prepare the planting hole. How long should I wait before planting, or do I need to check the soil after a few dry days to make sure that it has dried enough? Thank you.
There's no universal answer for how long you have to wait for the soil to dry out. It depends on the drainage and the type of soil and how much water is there. Right now, the soil's been dry here. It hasn't been moist, and we've had some rain, but not a lot here. I wouldn't worry about any excess water in it here, but if the drainage is slow or you've had a lot of water, then you have to feel the soil to find out. You can also lay out planks and walk on something that distributes your weight, which is we have 4x8 pieces of plywood that we cut down the middle. So we have a bunch of 2x8 pieces. We can make ourselves a gangway to walk out over wet ground. Or you can put on your snowshoes. I broke a strap on my snowshoes, so I haven't been wearing my snowshoes this year. But you need to distribute your weight, and the plant will probably actually appreciate it going into moist soil. You may have to check it afterwards to make sure it hasn't settled or slipped to the side. I've seen them get quite slushy in a planting hole if it's a really wet area. I see Suzanne saying that we have luck with bulbs that are eaten by rabbits. We don't deter. We do have rabbits, not as many as we had before. I think the coyotes that have moved in have had something to do with that, plus the feral cats that run around in the neighborhood. So we don't have a lot of problem with rabbits. We do have groundhog issues and we do have deer issues, and I protect only the things that we have determined will grow until they get tall enough that the deer can't stand up and reach them. How does that make sense? We have ewes in the backyard, and we don't mind if someday those ewes have just bare wood for 6 feet. We want the branches further up. We want the screen further up than ground level. So we'll protect them until they get to the height where even if a deer stands up, it can't reach all the top. We have beech trees that they like to eat, but eventually the beech trees are going to be high enough up that they aren't going to bother them. Aren't going to be able to reach the buds that they want to eat. So we'll protect them until they get big enough. But the bulbs, we've just been growing bulbs that tulips, the hybrid tulips for sure they're going to eat. So we haven't planted any of those. We have a couple out there that I think we put in because the kindergarten brought home bulbs one day and we planted those. We have species tulips, the species early tulips, and they have names like botanical Latin. It's Tulipa pulchella, Tulipa tacistum, and Tulipa violacea. These are the species tulips. They come up earlier. Generally, they have smaller flowers, but for whatever reason, the deer don't seem to like to eat those. They must not have the genes of whatever tulip that was bred into the hybrids. That's very tasty. What else? They don't eat anemones, so we're okay with that. I'm not sure that I've ever seen them eat bloodroot, which isn't a bulb, but is an ephemeral. So I can't tell you too much more than that. We don't grow crocus. We have a couple of crocus that we think the chipmunks must have brought us, but we don't grow crocus because we know they're going to eat crocus. We grow snowdrops instead, and Chionodoxa, Gloria of the Snow. Been dividing this week, which you can do because the plant is getting old and needs to be renewed to be a younger piece, or you can divide to multiply. I was doing both. These are moonshine yarrow, Acalia hybrid with one called Tegedia and variety moonshine. I think it's the best yarrow ever to come out of any nursery, but it's pretty much not available at garden centers anymore because newer ones have supplanted it. So I got a piece originally from my friend Pam, brought it to my yard, split it into 3 pieces and put it out. So now they've gotten big enough that this one, which was a division just a couple of years ago, is now big enough that I can divide it and spread it around to make more in the garden. So I popped it out of the ground And this is the part of the garden that we don't cut down. This is the wild area. And this week, some wonderful things happened that encouraged us to keep it wild. So I didn't cut it down. You're looking at last year's flower stalks and last year's leaves all shriveled up here. When I clear that away, I can see the new foliage coming at the base of last year's stalks. And I can take those pieces and either pull them apart, or because it's almost a woody stem that you'll see in a minute, you can also use your clippers and just clip a piece apart. But I needed to have pieces to give to Martha. And here's how they grow. So here's the stem from last year, the flower stalk from last year, going up and to the right. As it gets to the ground level, it has branched off from another flower stalk, which is what you had to crack it away from or cut it away from. But at the base of its leafy parts, it's growing its own roots. So this is a perfectly viable piece to have grown by itself. And I have had people say, well, look, it's coming from up on the stem. So this is one of those plants you shouldn't cut down, which is not true. Look for the buds down lower. You see the buds way down at the bottom? You could cut this right down to the ground, and these buds will then be stimulated to grow. They're not growing now because these have established dominance. And some of those are on a part of the stem that probably has accumulated various insect eggs and fungus spores that over the years is what makes the center die out. So I would rather renew it and keep it going by cutting it down, although I'm not going to cut it down until later. So looking at the divisions that you can make, some of them are huskier than others. This one is from an outside edge. It has more available soil to grow roots into, so it's got more roots. It's going to be more vigorous. Whereas things in the center have just petered out. They grew out, flowered, grew out, flowered, grew out, flowered, and where their growth is coming from the outside, and that's what you want to keep are those outside pieces. Those outside pieces with their own new roots are going to have a lot better growth for you than these inside pieces that were crowded. And then I take two outside chunks and put them back in. Now I have two plants that will be the size of that one at the end of the year. And Martha has 6 or 7 plants that'll be that size at the end of the year. It blooms for a long time. Its foliage looks great. Deer do not eat it, and that's an important thing. Martha had 25 deer in her yard all at once, and it's not a big yard. I put those divisions, I had meant to dig them, clean them, say I've taken away all of the debris that was on there, last year's leaves and whatever, clipped those off. And I put them in on top of a very wet piece of paper towel, so their roots were on a wet towel, and then covered the inside edge so that their leaves can stay out in the light, put them underneath the grow light to keep them for a couple of days, because the way the weather went, I couldn't dig them until Friday, and then I couldn't send them until Monday, and they're fine. They're down at Martha's garden already, packed in a box and gone away. Are there questions? I see a note about coyotes on the bottom of my chat here.
Yeah, that's the next question, Judith Levine. We have terrible bunny problems here in Metro Boston. Coyotes freak people out here. What are your preferred methods for deterrence? Not many gardeners here think they are cute anymore.
Yeah, I was very surprised. It must have been 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Rabbits started showing up in Beacon Hill in the garden that I worked in there. I said, rabbits in Beacon Hill? I mean, mostly it's cobblestone streets everywhere. But yeah, once they get in, they are a problem. The only thing that we've ever been able to do with rabbits is to fence things. They, for the most part, being heavily preyed upon by hawks and cats and every predator out there, they don't like to close themselves into areas. So they're usually starving if they will climb over a fence. So low wire fences we put around the plants that they most like to eat. One year I put a wire basket. I think I just had a wire basket. I put it over the top of an aster that was repeatedly being eaten by the rabbits. I said, come on, let it grow. And what happened is every time the aster grew outside the basket, they chewed it off. But later on in the year, as the aster got older, they didn't like it as much as it started going into flowering state. So I could take the basket off and it flowered in a beautiful mound as if somebody had been pinching it like a garden, Chinese botanical garden, making their flows of mums and stuff. But that's about all we've been able to do. Rabbits are terrors in the garden. It helps to have, it helps to use repellents, but I don't like to spray repellents on things, mostly for my own benefit, Steve's and mine. I don't like the work of having to go out and spray things. I don't like the expense of having to go out and spray things. And I don't like that I always end up getting it on myself and stink afterwards. And in addition, you have to switch the types of repellents you use. As one man at the Detroit Zoo told me one time, he said, yeah, he says, I just sprayed those roses and the rabbits are holding their noses and chewing. They've learned that that isn't going to kill them and they're hungry, so they're eating them anyway. I can't tell you anything more than that. Martha's promising that her yarrows are going to be in the ground tomorrow. I meant to tell you, Martha, that you can just make a slit and just hang those roots in it and set that little stick at ground level. Puts a pat down the soil, but all you need is a slit. Make one slit, dangle the roots into it, close it up, and they'll grow. The littler pieces are easier to plant, and in her soil, easy to plant is a good idea. Looking for, I see a question about veggies and flowers need dark to germinate and which need light. Most of our vegetables need light to germinate. And most reputable seed companies, I know you said that the seed packets are mum about this. All the seed packets that I've gotten have been very specific about those that need light to germinate. Do not cover, need light to germinate. Keep in light. So I can't really respond to which ones don't need it. Let me see. The tinier the seed, the more likely that it needs to be scattered on the top, like impatiens and begonias. But which vegetables? Anybody want to help me with this one? Who's been sowing vegetable seeds lately that do not want to be covered in order to sprout? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a complete blank on any that we had to do that. Shoot. Diane's saying that rabbits ate her special geranium that she just bought and planted, and she caged it so it was protected. And now it's a foot in diameter. And do you think I can take the cage off? Hoping the plant doesn't taste good anymore. I don't know. You can hope that it doesn't taste good anymore. I find that the taste thing seems to be a function of the age of the plant in the years, the age of its foliage in that year. For instance, when I put beans out, if I planted beans in the garden or peas, as they came up, the squirrels ate them. If I planted them inside and grew them until they had 2 or 3 sets of leaves, they didn't come by and eat them because the sprouts tasted sweet. But then by the time the plant had 5 or 6 leaves, it was able to make more of the chemicals that can be distasteful to things that eat it. So I don't know whether being bigger than last year is so much an issue as being what time of year the leaves are newest and most delectable. Oh, Judith says it's more the ones that are covered a 1/4 inch or more that I'm not sure about. I lightly cover all seeds. There are very few things I plant very deep, but the rule of thumb is that you plant the seed about as deep as its diameter. So if you have a tiny seed, you just barely cover them with a little bit of light sandy soil. If they're a bigger seed like a pea seed and the pea is a 1/4 inch in diameter, then you put it a 1/4 inch in the ground. And that's partially maybe largely because as the seed swells up and gets ready to bloom, because the first thing that comes out of the seed is the radicle, the first root, and it absorbs water and pumps up and breaks the seed coat, and it makes the seed bigger. So if the seed gets bigger and gets big enough that it actually breaks the surface, it could dry out. So you're putting them down deep enough that they don't dry out as they germinate. But it's pretty hard to put them in too deep. I've seen kids planting things in school projects that you would think there's no way that seed is going to come up, and they do. So I think take a look at the chat. People are helping there. Mary Ellen Turner is saying every one of her vegetable seeds have to be at least eighth of an inch covered. Yeah, I can't, I'm drawing that same blank. Thanks, Mary Ellen. or I can't think of what things would need to be on the surface. Okay, one of our favorite Japanese maples here, you'll see a little bit later. Hard cuts. We've talked to people about hard cuts, and I can't help but come back to this. This is beautyberry, Calicarpa. It's a little late to be cutting it back, but it doesn't bother me. We've often had to cut our own stuff back late. I'm half, well, 3/4 of the way through cutting it back and see the cuts that I've made, as low as I can possibly make them, and I'm continuing to cut the rest of it. And then when I'm done, it looks like that, which means I can walk across the top of it. So I tell people, cut it down so you can walk on it. I don't mean that you should go out and walk on your plants, but that you don't leave them up to be tripping you. Don't leave the stubble up high. This is what people do with hibiscus. This is at a garden center in their display garden. And I think there's at least 2 years worth of stubble here. And not only is that unattractive and a tripping hazard for the gardener who needs to be walking in and out of the garden, mulching and doing whatever else, but it's also going to slow down the growth of the new buds that are coming up and force them more to the outside edge and make it more quickly die out in the middle. So it looks better to cut it down, and it's too late now to cut the epimedium down. This is epimedium. We planned to use it for a ground cover. Took it 3 years to finally spread out and say, okay, yes, I am the yellow epimedium, and I can make a yellow blooming, and I can make a good ground cover. But then we had this winter was hard on it, and it burned out all the leaves. I should have cut them down before, because now, how are you going to cut those down without losing all those flowers that are coming up through it? So it looks better to cut them down hard, and it works better to cut them down early before the new foliage comes up. It also can be detracting. This Calicarpa beautyberry was, as you see here, but 3 times more of it, and it was screening from our view back here. And back there is our spring blooming Spirea prunifolia, bridal wreath spirea. It's a straight up and down spirea that has absolutely beautiful flowers. They're just tiny little roses all along the stems and a nice fall color. And I want to see that. I don't want to see a bunch of just white sticks from the Calicarpa. So I'm getting a better look by cutting things back out, completely out of the picture. And so when you set this, just to say that I should be glad that I don't have to worry about leaving stubs like this. This is beavers at work near where our daughter Sonia lives in Guelph, Ontario. I didn't really realize that beavers worked on such big trees, but look what they've got back here. They fell them and then they cut all the smaller branches off and drag them off to make their dams. I wonder how many beavers get smashed because they go too far inward before they start chewing the other side. Pretty
Janet,
big trees.
I'm sorry, Janet, Donna and Nancy both are asking that is it necessary to cut back the beautyberry new plant for them? So recommendations on that?
It is not necessary to cut back beautyberry. The stems, let's see if they're even there. The stems are straight and unbranched the first year, except as they get to blooming time, they grow side branches that bear the flowers and the fruits. This year, the buds all along the branch will form side branches that'll make this branch heavier and it will become wider and more laid out in front of you. It's a matter of personal preference. You can put them out and just leave them to grow. The wood does get older, and eventually at some point you need to take some old wood out because it starts getting cluttered in the center. But I prefer to grow them where they stand up in where the new branches radiate out in a nice symmetrical manner, and where I can cut them down every year without having to worry about great big thick branches to take out of the middle of a clustered shrub. But you don't have to cut them down. The forsythias did well this winter. Quite often the forsythias get killed back by the cold and they'll only bloom on the protected inside parts of the plant. But this year, right to the tips. Everything except that last bit that grew in August and didn't set flower buds. It didn't have time to set flower buds. Is all in bloom. Okay, we talked a little bit about boxwood already, and we noticed we were noticing boxwood, that this isn't just a shearing dieback. These have probably been attacked by boxwood tree moth. And if you're in a position where you can't be monitoring for the tree moth and see the caterpillars when they first come out and control them, you really need to take the boxwood out. Because they're going to devastate those boxwood, and they're going to breed and just spread that much more among the nearby boxwoods, because they are moth, they do fly. So if you see branches, whole branches dead, especially if they're scraping on the branches, because as the generations go by in a year, the caterpillars that start in eating foliage will start eating bark and strip the bark off of the plant. Then you probably had boxwood tree moth. And these look to me like they have the same problem. They're not just crowded and died out in the center. They've been stripped out at the edges too. So Tanya, I would say, yes, you need to grow something else. They have enough problems as it is, boxwood. This is leaf miner. You can see the blisters on the leaf where an insect, which was laid on the leaf last year and then chewed its way into between the leaf surfaces and is mining, like a miner mines coal, or is mining the inside of the leaf. And does that all winter long until about now it exits through the bottom of the leaf and pupates in the soil and comes back as a gnat later on. If you've got that problem, we have boxwood leaf miner, and it's pretty extreme this year. I'm just going to cut the boxwoods all the way back tomorrow, probably after I get back home, and let them grow back again. And I'll destroy, burn, or send to the hot compost all of the leaves, all of the branches that I cut off, so that the boxwood miners will be killed inside them. Leaf miner. Oh, and boxwood psyllid. See the ant that's here? Ants crawling up and down on a plant often indicate, not always, but often indicate that there's a sucking insect working on the plant, and it is creating excess. And in its excrement, the ants will take that excess that they're pumping out of the leaf and use it for its sugary content. And that boxwood psyllid, the one that's sucking, is causing the leaves to cup and curl at the ends. Neither of these things are as devastating as boxwood tree moth, but they're defacing the plant. Tanya asked for what alternative do I have? For a straight 1-for-1 alternative, another one with small leaves that you can shear, that will handle some shade, not as good in the shade as boxwood. And it's hardy to zone 5, not quite as hardy as some of the hardiest Korean boxwoods, is shoot, I forgot its other name. It's Ilex glabra, inkberry, which is a type of holly. So now you're going to have the problem of deer will eat holly. They won't eat boxwood, but they'll eat holly. This is, you would think it's boxwood. I did when I first looked at it and walked by. This is not boxwood. This is Ilex glabra that was being pruned wrong. And in one of our articles, I showed how I pruned it in that year to have sloping sides so that the top was narrower than the bottom, and how it looked 2 years later all filled back in. So I would go with Ilex glabra inkberry. Okay, are there any questions? I see people chatting about stuff. I love it. They do that. This is called Glory of the Snow. It's Chionodoxa. And it's another one of the little bulbs that will spread itself around. Not as aggressively as squill, not even as aggressively as Pushkinia, the squill relative, but it's a beautiful blue this time of year. And Muscari, the grape hyacinth, is one in the middle right there. Grape hyacinth will also spread rather rapidly, but there is a species. Well, you'll have to look in the catalogs to see. There's one species of Muscari that doesn't spread so viciously, and you can plant that one instead. New soil. This is a shout out to all the volunteers that help us at the Waterford Library. It looks so beautiful when we put new soil in, but the big secret with new soil is you can't get new soil without getting new weeds. So this year, just a couple weeks ago, on a 40-degree day when snow was forecast, and I was sure that nobody was going to show up to move, we're down, we've got half of it moved already. This is 3 yards, there's another 3 yards here, 6 yards of soil into the beds, and they showed up anyway, gloves and hats and wheelbarrows. We had to ramp up into the beds to raise the level in the beds. So we're using a car ramp to come up in with the wheelbarrows. Because the library renovated the beds and put new stone edges around where there had been railroad ties, landscape lumber had been there. And we were promised that they were going to be the same footprint, they called it, the same, but they were taller. So we had to dig everything out of the beds and raise the beds. This one needed to be raised a little bit further. We had to build wells around the trees that we couldn't pick up and move to a higher level in order to keep their level at the original level and not bury their trunk like a volcano mulch. But we added soil to bring them up. The side benefit is that, and in digging things up, for instance, I found this beautiful little viburnum seedling, a baby of the Berkwood viburnum that's in the garden there. And I said, oh, I could use a viburnum. Look at that beautiful root system. Took that one home. But we have all kinds of speedwell. How can you be mad at something that has such beautiful blue flowers? I have seen some wonderful lawns of seed where the creeping speedwell has taken over large parts of the lawn, and they just look so beautiful in the spring, all blue. We have lots of speedwell, lots of velvet leaf. I've forgotten what other things. We started filling beds last year, and it was apparent right away that we were going to get new weeds. We never had pokeweed before. We have pokeweed now. Seed banks come in with soil. And we just tell you to try to go and see other things. We took some time this week to run over to Windsor. Windsor, right across the river from Detroit, gardens in the more toward the European fashion than American fashion. So we often see some of the same plants in the same zonal conditions as we grow here, but tended a different way. So this is Jackson Park, the Queen Elizabeth II the Royal Sunken Gardens area. And you come in through that pavilion from the parking area, and you're looking down. There's a central fountain and a sidewalk down each side with formal beds on the left and perennial beds on the right. It's very much the way that Belle Isle's gardens were set up, and have not been maintained quite the same way at all. But great bulb shows this time of year. Sometimes you say, sometimes maybe the bulbs got mixed up, but sometimes it might be that when they pulled the bulbs, because after they finish blooming, they pull the bulbs out and plant annuals in their place. Sometimes you miss a bulb or two, and there they are back again, changing the look a little bit with the white daffodils mixed in with the bicolors. But it's a great place to walk. It's a good place to go and look and see perennials that maybe you aren't used to seeing, and see them grown in a more formal fashion, where, for instance, it's a square of Bergenia. I like Bergenia. The leaves do get kind of tattered over the winter time, but new leaves are coming up even as these old leaves are falling down. These are just getting ready to bloom. It kind of has a rhubarb-like reddish stalk that comes up with a red-violet flower on it. And some of our favorite Japanese maples are there, coming in the cross-axis beds. This is waterfall Japanese maple. I see these all the time, that people plant them in their little courtyards, and they give them, oh, maybe 5 feet around. And these guys are a good 20 feet across. They're beautiful trees. Just let them grow. Well, they did a lot of pruning along the way in order to take out unnecessary wood. And one of them, another one of our favorite ones, guards this entranceway. You'll see these behind this area, just off to the side, in another part of Jackson Park. There are some World War II fighter planes. You'll see those later because Steve included those pictures for me. But seeing other things helps you to know stuff like, well, this is a star magnolia. They're hardier than the saucer magnolias and blooming in full bloom earlier, but they're supposed to have gray bark. This has very black bark because it's been hosting a lot of insects that have been sucking out the leaves and the twigs and dropping excrement onto the branches, and fungus grows on the excrement called sooty mold. So you can look and say, wow, it's still blooming and still living, even though it's got a huge population of insects on it. And I can feel glad that we have as many birds and wildlife we do that can keep our areas cleaned up. This week, for the first time since we've been in this house, and this is our 8th year now, we saw an eastern meadowlark. We've seen her twice. It's a female, and we know she's around. Meadowlarks need large areas of prairie, and their numbers, although they're not endangered, they are of special concern because their numbers have fallen by about 60% over the last 40 or 50 years because the prairies have been pretty much taken up by farms, and the farms are no longer family farms where they keep acreage fallow from year to year. So meadowlarks need dense cover of forbs and grasses to in order to raise their young. So we looked and said, oh, maybe she saw all of our dense stuff out front and is going to nest in there. We've seen them nest. One time we had a garden we were redoing about middle of May, and I was digging out daylilies to move them to another place in the garden. And the daylilies had gotten big enough that their foliage had flopped over a little bit. And as I pulled up the foliage to find out where to dig, there was a nest underneath it, tucked in underneath the daylily. I said, oh, shoot, that must be why that bird is walking back and forth on the garage. They're watching me. So I dug up the whole clump, nest and all, and moved it about 15 feet away. And then Steve and I sat back and watched the meadowlark come down, land right where it used to be, and then begin to circle, to spiral, going in a circular pattern, wider and wider around until she found the nest and ducked right into it. So we're hoping that she's going to nest out there. It gives me the incentive to look the other way while things look a little messy this time of year because they're going to come up and grow fast. It's good to look around your own garden too. I've waited years for this particular hellebore to be able to flower well. I want to have it by my patio, but that's a wind tunnel. And so far it had killed all the flower buds. But finally this year, the juniper that was a much abused plant when we moved in, and I did a lot of pruning on it. Finally, that juniper is beginning to block the area where the wind comes through, and this hellebore is able to bloom. You need to see that you're succeeding in the things you want to do. So it's after 8 o'clock, and I'll need to go help watch the grandkids, but I can stay for a few minutes and talk about any other questions that are there. These are those fighter planes that are in the park next to the Royal Queen Elizabeth II Royal Sunken Garden, with on the ground a Lancaster bomber outlined. Steve is a military history buff, so these things interest him a lot. Jackson Park, yes, Carol, it's Jackson Park, right? Just go straight out east from the tunnel and egress on Windsor and to Tecumseh Street, and you'll find Jackson Park. Pretty hard to miss.
And Janet, Diane in Waterville had a question. She said, did I hear you correctly? You're actually going to cut your boxwoods right to the ground to get rid of the leaf miner?
Yeah, I'm pretty close to the ground. There'll probably still be some leaves, but because the miners don't usually lay eggs way deep into the plant, so I'll cut them back until they might have just a couple of little twigs on them. But you can cut them all the way back. I've done that before, and yes, they'll leaf back out again, unless they were terribly sick. It's Jackson Park, and I think someone had asked about it had to do with, it's called boxwood tree moth, or box tree moth. It is a caterpillar. It turns into a moth, and although it's boxwood that it attacks, boxwood is actually a small tree, large shrub in its standard form. It's called a box tree moth or boxwood tree moth. Okay, so with that, I will bid you guys adieu. Next Saturday, May 3rd, we're doing our weekend walk about 175, easy on the environment. And we're going to invite everyone to join us because it's been developing into something that is a lot bigger than just us. So we'll be asking people to join us so you can invite your friends. So our next Free for All Friday will be 2 weeks from now, May 9th. We'll see you then. Have a great weekend.